Good morning. The next attribute in architecture is the character of architecture. The character of architecture. One character is the material character. What is the material you are using for a particular form or a structure? Use a material character to the architecture, such as Taj Mahal in India. It's marble. So the material character, it gets a significance once throughout marble is employed, and you get a feeling because of that. That character is called material character. Qutub Minar is made of sandstone. Sandstone is the material used for making Qutub Minar. So it has a material character. Both of them have compositions. Along with that, they have a character which is also a creative principle in architecture. So using different materials, you can make different forms conveying different visual feeling. You can very well see the color of sandstone, the color of Qutub Minar, and that of Taj Mahal, because marble being employed. So that gives a visual message. Similarly, the fabricational character, the way in which the form is evolved or the structure is evolved. Steel structures. Steel structures have, because steel being employed, it has a character of that of steel. All railway stations, most of the railway stations, if you see, most of the structures will be of steel. I told you while dealing with railway engineering, because steel is capable of taking vibration, impact loads. Ductility of steel is small. So steel truss, large span steel trusses in huge enclosures, especially in international airports. They are made of large span trusses. Different types of trusses are there. Spatial trusses are there. Space trusses. Space trusses, spatial trusses means three-dimensional trusses. So using steel fabrication truss, the architecture gets a character. One such type using triangular plate elements. Using triangular plate elements, a dome, a globe, a sphere can be made using triangular plates. One such example is isosahedron. Isosahedron. The whole sphere is made with triangular plates. So it gets a character. Plate elements. Similarly, according to the size of the element, dimensional character. Get a dimensional character. A vertical member, a thick vertical member. That if the thickness is more, you get a feeling of a pillar. or pilaster, pillar or pilaster. When the thickness is reduced, you get a feeling of columns, slender columns, vertical member, slender columns. When these members are mounted horizontally, they are called beams. When the depth of the beam is high, then it is called a deep beam. Deep beam. In architecture, deep beams are employed very much to give large span spaces, enclosures, deep beams. When the beam is not having that much depth, then it is an ordinary beam, rectangular beam, or a square beam, or a circular beam, whatever it may be. Usually, circular beams in this plane, horizontal plane, it will be there. But you will not have a circular plane spanning a direction. You can see a circular beam behind me. You can see the architectural elements, the column behind me, the 9 columns are supporting a circular beam. So it gets a character. Apart from the color conveys a visual feeling. Apart from that, it has a character because the circular columns are common. Unlike circular beams, circular columns are common. Suppose this circular column, instead of this circular column, if it were a rectangular column, suppose it is a rectangular column, the visual feeling, because you see 4 distinct sharp edges, sharp corners. When 4 sharp corners are seen, your focus, the center of vision, will concentrate on those corners. So the visual feeling will be different. So character will be different. Here you don't have, it's universal. As we have seen a point, a circular column, it doesn't have a specific center of vision. You have to look at the column as a whole. That's the advantage of a circle. And these columns are supported by a circular beam. The circular beam in plan, but it's a rectangular beam. It's a rectangle made with a formwork. Formwork is nothing but the mold in which the beam is made. So a rectangular beam having a depth and a width with a circular plan. So the column and the beam together gives a visual character to the structure. Then the beam is having lesser thickness, depth. Thickness here, the convex thickness, I mean the depth. Then it is called a shallow beam or a lintel. A lintel. A lintel will have a different character compared to a beam. And beam will have a different character compared to a deep beam because of their dimensions. That's a dimensional character. Usually lintels are architectural substitutes for arches. In the traditional architecture, vernacular architecture, traditional architecture, if you see, openings are facilitated. To facilitate an opening, while dealing with arch dam, this point has been focused. So to facilitate an opening, you give an arch shape. So this arch is circular. If it is exactly semicircular, it is called a true arch. If the arch is a part of a circle, segment, then it is called a segmental arch. Usually segmental arch is provided in small openings for windows and doors. If you see ancient buildings, ancient residences, you can see segmented arches. Lintel and arch. Lintel is a substitute for arch. So if you provide a lintel, it is a horizontal element. If you provide an arch, it is a curvilinear element. The visual feeling will be different. The headroom, suppose you provide a lintel, the headroom obviously gets reduced. If you provide an arch, the headroom at the center gets increased. There will be other constructional constraints, that is different. But as well as the outcome of the shape, once an arch is completed and once a lintel is completed, if you start comparing a lintel and an arch, they will convey different visual messages. That is what is to be highlighted here. Even though lintel will have its own advantages, arch will have its own advantages in the case of its structural behavior. So we are not now discussing the structural behavior. We are telling about the visual impact of the effect of the structural elements. Elliptical arch, parabolic arch. So you have various forms and all of them will have different visual feeling conveying to the viewer. So beam, deep beam, lintel. Substitute for lintel is an arch. Then when we told you a planar element, when the thickness of that structural element is less compared to the other two dimensions, then it is called a slab. So beam, lintel, slab. The structural action of a beam and that of a lintel and that of an arch and that of a slab are different. That we will try to discuss when we come across the building technology aspect of it. As far as architecture is concerned, they get a character, slab has a character, beam has yet another character, arch yet another character, column yet another character, a vertical composition, a beam, a horizontal composition. Here you have a vertical composition of series of columns and a horizontal composition with a circular beam. So the slab action, the beam action, the arch action. When the thickness is still less, very less, then it is called a plate action. The architectural character also will change. The slab feeling, visual feeling of a slab and visual feeling of a plate are totally different. Usually steel plates. When you are using steel plates, the thickness need not be that much. Usually the thickness will be in mm. So it has a material character of that of a steel and the fabricational character of that of a steel structure and a dimensional character of that of a plate. Then it will have an action of plate action. So beam action, slab action, plate action. The beam and the slab and the plate are planar elements. They are straight elements, linear elements. Beam is a linear element. Slab is a planar element. Plane is also a planar element with reduced thickness. When this plate gets a curvature, When the plate gets a curvature, we will see tomorrow what the curvature will be called. Thank you. God bless.